Salut and welcome to another episode of Konnakol 2020. My name is Carlitos Joder, as always, who else? And today is the 13th of January, and I have something special prepared for you, lovely people. This is a two-part series that we are starting, that means today and tomorrow, in which I'll try to explain the basic language of Konnakol, both for the recited phrases and for the recited pauses or gaps. I decided to do this because I got many questions from people who wanted that I talked for a bit about this very basic building blocks of Konnakol, like a primer of sorts, before going forward with more complex compositions. So here we go. Part 1. Konnakol language for reciting phrases. While I have briefly discussed the language used to recite phrases in Konnakol, especially in the 5th to 10th episodes of this series, today we're going to have a deeper look at this very central topic. First of all, Konnakol compositions rely heavily on numbers, so it's not unusual that your guru will give you a composition that is nothing but a string of numbers, such as this, for example. This is a real korvai, a real composition, by the way, and one that's very fun to play, let me tell you. But the thing is, when you look at it like this, it's pretty cryptic stuff, don't you think? Unless, of course, you know the code. So, without further ado, let's crack this code. In this table, you can see how to recite phrases of 1 to 10 beats long. Going from top to bottom, we see that we say ta for 1 beat, Thaka for 2 beats, Thakita for 3, Thakadhimi for 4, Thadhi-kinathom for 5, and let me stop right there. Because the phrase for 5, Thadhi-kinathom, is central in Konnakol, so it's very important that you really learn it by heart. Thadhi-kinathom, Thadhi-kinathom. The phrase for 6 beats is Thadhi-kinathom. You see the pause in between. You normally extend it to say Thadhi-kinathom. This is clearly an extension of the phrase for 5, Thadhi-kinathom. We are lengthening the second beat, D, to be Di. And similarly, the phrase for 7 is ThakaThadhikinathom. You can see we are adding the phrase for 2, Thaka, in front of the phrase for 5, Thadhi-kinathom, which I told you was very important. Another very common phrase for 7 is Thadhi-kinathom, which if you look at it, it's another way of extending Thadhi-kinathom, which has put pauses in a different place. And also, as the phrases get longer, more possibilities of reciting them start to appear. We'll see about that at some other time. So, almost at the end of the table, the phrase for 8 beats is Thadhom-Thadhikinathom, which what it's doing is adding 3 beats in front of Thadhi-kinathom, much like we did with 7. However, keep in mind that we don't say 8 as simply the phrase for 3 plus the phrase for 5, which would be Thakita-Thadhikinathom. But this is Thadhom-Thadhikinathom. It's a different phrase. So, the phrase for 9 beats is ThakadiguThadhikinathom, which in this case, we are adding 4 beats in front of Thadhi-kinathom. And again, these are not the 4 beats we use when reciting a phrase of 4, which was Thakadhimi. Another very common version of 9 is Thadhom-Thadhikinathom, which is an extension of the phrase for 8, Thadhom-Thadhikinathom. And those of you who've been with me from the start of this series know that in episode 4, we saw how you can recite the phrase for 9 in 5 different ways, which are not this way. So there's definitely a lot of different things you can do here. Finally, the phrase for 10 beats is Thakitathom-Thadhikinathom. Notice that you have like a space between Thakitathom and then Thadhi-kinathom. So it's another way of extending Thadhi-kinathom with a phrase for 5. But it's important that we're not doing Thadhi-kinathom. We are not doing the phrase for 5 twice. We're doing a new phrase for 5 at the beginning, and then the phrase for 5, our friend Thadhi-kinathom. So, now that we've seen all this, if we applied this code to the composition I showed before, which is here as a reminder, we can start replacing numbers with actual phrases. So let's do it. First, we replace all the non-bracketed ones with the phrase for 1, which is ta. Then we replace all the non-bracketed 2s with the phrase for 2, which is Thaka. Then we do the same for the non-bracketed 3s, replacing them with the phrase for 3, which is Thakita. And you can imagine we can continue with the phrases for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Not for 10, because we don't have any 10 in this particular composition. And by the way, here's a refresher of what they are. So after a bit of replacing, we eventually come to this. That's quite an advancement, don't you think? It's not so cryptic anymore. And I'm sure you noticed that I left the numbers in parentheses unsolved. We still have some numbers there. Actually, they're all 4s. And that's because those represent gaps or pauses in the composition. And even though it might sound a bit counterintuitive, in Konnakol we do recite the pauses. So they are not rendered as strictly silence. But we use a different language for them. So the language for the pause of 4 is not going to be the language of the phrase of 4. But you know what? We'll work on that tomorrow. I think there's quite a bit of information to take in from this video. So what else do I have to say? Thank you very much for watching, and let me know if you have any questions or doubts. I've been Carlitos from Slovenia, and goodbye.